Welcome to this webinar recording where we will look at the exciting ways to bring the industry into your classroom. I am Beth and I'm joined by Gemma, and we are both part of the provider development team at NCFE, and our role is to support teaching and learning. My background is art and design, and I worked in the fashion industry in New York and London before going into teaching, and this gave me that vital knowledge of the industry to implement into my teaching. At NCFE, I support the VCERT creative subjects. Gemma, please share with us a bit of your background.
Thanks, Beth. I'm Gemma, and my previous experience includes functional skills English teaching and my programme management of initial teacher education and higher education, including an undergraduate degree. I'm the Provider Development Officer for Education and Early Years T-Level at NCFE, and my passion is around further education, specifically creative teaching and learning and educational research. We understand that in teaching, we haven't all had the experience of industry, and this webinar will share with you how you can still bring the industry into your classroom, whatever your background. Please note that any companies or brands we cover in this webinar aren't specifically endorsed by NCFE and are just suggestions that we hope will inspire you.
This webinar will focus on bringing industry to the classroom. We will share lots of different ways, from trips to case studies. The examples we will share throughout will link to creative industries, as this is my background. However, throughout we will share how these could be used in other areas, for example, education in early years, engineering, business, health and social care, health and fitness, and more subject areas.
Look at why bringing the industry into your classroom is vital, whatever your school budget. Bringing industry into the classroom is so important and essential for vocational courses. It gives your learners real-life learning experiences and inspires them for their future in the world of work. It also broadens and enriches your curriculum, making learning more engaging. Using these inspiring techniques, you can encourage your students to form long-term goals and model the skills they'll need for the subject they're studying. We know that budget plays a big part on how you can bring industry into your classroom, and we know school budgets are tight. In this webinar, we'll look at different ways to bring industry to your classroom, including some free resources that you can explore in and outside of your classroom.
Let's start with guest speakers. Who do you know as a teacher? Friends, neighbours, past students? Who could you ask? Use LinkedIn and other social media platforms to give a shout out. Guest speakers do not need to cost. Do you know any local community groups or companies that could come and talk to your learners in person or come and talk to them virtually? This is a workshop I ran with one of my past students. She has her own business, Dirty Laundry. She came in for a day and ran a workshop around upcycling t-shirts. Amy shared her experience and how she set up her own business, and at the end of the day she shared feedback with the learners, and they had the opportunity to ask questions and could see the real working world and how they could create a product and sell it. Let's look at other subjects. What guest speakers could you bring into your subject area, and could you run live briefs with your learners? Gemma, what guest speakers could education and early years teachers bring to the classroom?
There's so many guest speakers that could come and talk with your students or colleagues in education and early years. For example, you could invite along local nursery staff to share their experience of working in early years, or former students and ask them to share their journey from the classroom to industry and what helped them on their way. You could invite a children's book author or an illustrator who could engage students in storytelling workshops, share how books are created, or inspire a love of reading. This could easily be turned into a live brief activity by asking students to collaborate with the speaker to design their own storybook or reading activities, and then think about the theory that underpins it in practice. Think about your subject area. Who could you call upon, and what live brief scenario could you run in your classroom?
Thanks, Gemma. We'll now look at trips, and again, we'll concentrate as well on school budget. Educational trips are great enrichment, but they also face a lot of barriers as a teacher. Your school budget, health and safety, safeguarding to be taken into account, risk assessment, and it can be lots of paperwork and fitting around the timetable. Trips can be a long stay, a day trip, or somewhere local to your school. Consider transport and costs. I've ran many trips over my years of teaching, from Barcelona to day trips to Edinburgh. They're a fantastic opportunity for your learners to see the wider world, but they can be very complex to organise and plan. There are some great agents who specialise in school college trips. Does your school offer any trips already? Trips further afield are not fully inclusive due to cost, so let's have a look at a budget-free trips next. So what's local to your school or college? Local trips where no transport is required. These tend to be more straightforward trips. Where could you walk to in location of your school, college? Local shops, businesses, schools, universities. Where could you take your learner? That links to your subject area without needing a budget. There are so many free museums in the UK. You can sign up to and find out about future exhibitions coming that may link to your subject area. Also consider other locations, parks, shopping centres, colleges, libraries, local businesses. Reach out and ask if your learners could visit.
Some great ideas there, Beth. Let's now have a look at how you can bring industry to the classroom through films, documentaries, and shorts. There are so many out there linked to almost any subject area. Forms does your school have access to? Barriers to using these can include your school or college firewalls, or perhaps the cost of subscriptions. And you'll also need to consider if you have a whiteboard with working equipment to be able to share them as a class activity. Also, don't forget to make sure it's age appropriate too, and that learners and guardians are made aware of what they'll be watching in class. There are so many documentaries, films, and shorts that link to industry. Think about engineering here, for example. You could watch a CNC operator machine a component, or a CAD drawing being created from start to finish on a high-speed reel. Following on from films, let's look at the virtual world. Webinars and online platforms have progressed so much over the last few years. You can really bring industry to your classroom without even leaving your school or college.
There are so many free on-demand webinars out there. I have examples here from the creative industry over the next few slides, but there are so many on offer for other subjects areas. You can walk around places all over the world through a virtual tour. Think about your subject area. Where could your learners visit online? You can see online exhibitions and archives. Here are some examples for the creative industry: the Victoria and Albert Museum, the Louvre, the Royal Academy, the Fashion and Textiles Museums. And Google has many areas within their search engines. Here is the arts and culture. There is so many out there you and your learners can access to see the real world of work.
Next, let's take a look at role play, and this very much comes down to your subject area and really knowing your learners. You can create some real life scenarios within your classroom, and for many vocational courses, this is a core part of the qualification. You could create a healthcare environment where your learners check each other's pulses or blood pressure, mock up an aviation safety demonstration, or for photography, learners could set up a scoop for a photo shoot. For health and fitness, you could set up a training program for learners to record. There are so many possibilities out there for your learners.
Let's look at case studies, industry projects, and research tasks. A great way to bring the industry to classroom is through projects. We talked earlier in the webinar about guest speakers, but you as a teacher can set briefs projects linked to the industry. This could be through a research task or a scenario your learners have to develop into an outcome. This could be group work project. You could link to an online competition, or do you have any local businesses who could set a brief for your learners? It could be research task from consumers, a design for a poster for the business, a promotion for the company. You could give learners data analysis tasks. So many possibilities through classwork. This was a project I ran for many years with Krispy Kreme. But how does fashion link to donuts? A lot of large companies have to outreach to local communities. The learners created products inspired by Krispy Kreme brand. These would be displayed in stores for a couple of weeks, and learners created wallpapers, cushions to clothing. What local businesses do you have near you that you could work in collaboration with? Once the connection is made, you could then keep running this every academic year.
Another way to bring industry to the classroom is a local trip, or if possible, a national one to an open day. Why not consider college and university open days? There are also job fairs for further and higher education events. Students could get a feel for university life or what employment might look like in their chosen area. This can really help them with planning their next steps and goal setting. A lot of job fairs also have student sessions or allow students to come along as they are the future employers. Career fairs are a great way to put professional practice into place, and you could run activities around this, such as what to wear for an interview, questions that you might be asked, or how to write a CV or a covering letter. This can really prepare your learners for their future working career.
Let's look over everything we have covered in today's webinar. The next part is over to you. How and what industry could you bring to your classroom? What could you change? How could you inspire your learners? We have covered a wide range, and this is all dependent on budget and the factors at your school or college. But something as simple as a role play or a brief centered around your subject industry can really bring your classroom to life. Have fun. Please could you complete our Professional Development Week feedback? This helps us to develop new CPD and ways to improve, along with if more industry webinars would be supportive to your teaching. Thank you from myself and Gemma at the Provider Development Team, and we hope you feel inspired.